What up, guys? It's DJ Reese back with some more juicy Reddit stories. We'll go over some real and sometimes downright cruel stories about unforgivable acts done to people that will make you question humanity. Alrighty, let's get into it. What did someone do to you that you'll never be able to forgive them for? Story 1. My mother was extremely abusive and hurt me on many occasions. Her best friend, who was my godmother, saw all of it. She was a teacher and therefore a mandated reporter. She turned a blind eye to everything my mom did. I asked her about it when I was a teenager, and all she said was that my mom didn't really have anyone in her corner, so she needed support. It took me being an adult and going to therapy to understand how much of my mom's behavior was abuse. I'm still horrified that this woman saw so much and actively covered it up. I haven't spoken with her in years, but if I ever got the opportunity, I would ask why she didn't report it, especially since she was a mandated reporter. Edit. I appreciate everyone's support. My mom was mentally ill and passed 6 years ago due to end-stage liver failure due to alcoholism. When my parents divorced, my dad took full custody of me. Physical and mental abuse comes in multiple forms. There were documented situations with the police and a couple at the ER. I know I'll never get the closure of my godmother ever admitting that she probably should have reported something. My father had already reported multiple instances, and a second witness would have helped. Seriously, though, what the hell is wrong with OP's godmother? I bet since they were friends, she didn't want to rat out her best friend, but at least talk to her about it or realize that she's a crappy friend, report the abuse and move on. The fact that OP's mom died and the godmother still hasn't acknowledged the abuse just blows my mind. Some people just confuse the hell out of me sometimes. Story 2. In 2007, I was struggling severely. I was working 2 jobs to pay rent on a room to someone overcharging me, eating ramen every day, and was behind on my car and utility payments. It was taking everything to not lose it all. My dad, as a favor 6 months prior, offered to take over the insurance for my car, so at least I wouldn't lose the only thing keeping me mobile. He called me and told me my stepmother didn't want him paying my insurance, that I was a big boy and I needed to handle it myself. I begged and pleaded, saying it would only be a few more months until I had ground under my feet. He told me what my stepmother said was final. That alone would be enough. But no, he drove to my residence at night while I was sleeping and took the plates off my car. The next day, he called the bank and told them where my car was to be repossessed. I woke up to my car with no plates, so I made some paper ones and drove to work. Luckily, I didn't get pulled over, but the repo guys came by my work and took my car, leaving me stranded. It's been 15 years, and I'll never forgive my stepmother or my father for that. Never will talk to either of them again. It nearly killed me between depression and freezing to death being homeless. Dude, what the hell? I feel like this was totally unnecessary and such a crappy thing to do to your own child, especially when they are struggling like that. And OP also wasn't even living with them. Maybe the stepmother and dad were struggling for money too? I don't know, but either way, taking the only thing away from someone that provides them a means to get to and from their job is such a low and scummy thing to do. Freaking a-holes, man. Story 3. When my wife and I had our baby, my mother-in-law decided to come stay with us for 2 weeks. Great, I thought, because I had no experience with babies. I thought she'd help us with various tasks, feedings, cooking, diapers, etc. She's an old-school housewife that thinks it's a sin for women to work outside the house, and she prides herself on her cooking and cleaning. She spent 2 weeks sitting on our couch reading. She didn't help do one damn thing. She didn't change a diaper. She didn't cook anything. She did, however, sit and stare at us while we did everything. One day, she made a crack about how much we liked frozen pizza. We were just barely surviving, and frozen pizza was the only thing keeping us alive. Oh, and my father-in-law didn't come because he had a Vietnam vet's reunion. His first grandchild, the child named after him, his only daughter. Nope, vet reunion. I get it. Vet groups are very important and do a lot of good. But you'd think he'd skip it one year. But no. After 2 weeks, my father-in-law announced he was coming. My mother-in-law hopped up and baked an apple pie for him. I always said that if we'd had another one, I'd have stood on the doorstep with a shotgun to greet anyone who tried to come in. I mean, as a vet myself, yes, cats join the military all the time, didn't you know? This doesn't surprise me at all. Some vets become obsessed with their service, and a lot of times they'll miss out on important events doing stuff like this. I think when some vets leave the service, there's a void in their life. And the only way they can fill it is by being around other vets and reminiscing about the old days. Definitely not something I would do, but I kinda get it, I guess. Story 4. My ex-best friend was quite toxic and depressed. She used her depression to keep me and other people under her arms, and to manipulate them. For example, when I was disagreeing with her, she would change her whole mindset to the depressed mode and would hurt herself. Sometimes in front of me, sometimes a bit later. She would also hurt herself in front of the whole class before or during oral assignments. Each time I was very worried for her and was feeling guilty of her suffering. I was doing everything I could to please her and to make her feel good, thinking it would help her fighting depression. One day, while talking about what we were going to do after high school, we came to a disagreement and she started to cry again, and I tried to recomfort her like usual. The next day, I went with my usual friend group, but they were very cold with me. Her boyfriend at the time told me I had nothing to do here with them. They started to say that I was a bad person and that it was all my fault that she was hurt. Turns out she told each of our friends that I called her crazy the night before and that I was a very bad and mean person. They all took her side, leaving me alone. I invested so much of my heart and trust in her for more than 12 years. I thought we had something strong. I thought it was going the same way for her, but it seemed that I was nothing for her. It really broke me to lose her so suddenly, and she knew exactly what she was doing. Okay, I'm not a therapist, so take this with a grain of salt, and let me know if you disagree in the comments below. But this just screams narcissism and histrionic behavior. I know that's a big buzzword because of the Amber Heard trial, but it definitely seems like OP's friend does the things they do to get attention. Again, I'm not going to state that as a fact or anything, but that was just my first thought when I read the story. It sucks that OP lost a close friend, but that was no true friend if they could just throw you away like garbage at the drop of a dime. You're better off without them, OP. Story 5. My stepmom abused me physically and emotionally for about 12 years. She was always careful to do it when my dad wasn't around and justified any incidents I told him about by calling me a liar. But it isn't her fault. She's psychologically disturbed because of her mom. My mom is a crystal meth addict in a volatile, abusive marriage. She was also careful to abuse me in interesting ways, too, most of the time, so that it would sound like I was crazy if I reported it. Things like forcing me to run hot water over a burn, using our shop vacuum to trip me into the side of our wood-burning stove so that it burned me, digging her fingernails into my shoulder until it bled, etc. To add extra insult to injury, several years after the divorce, my dad fell in love. His partner was my stepmom's sister. I know it sounds crazy, and I was the opposite of thrilled at first, but she was the most incredible woman my dad ever dated, and I loved her dearly. She passed away in February, due to pneumonia that was complicated by cancer. At the end, she knew she was dying, but she couldn't speak. She communicated with everyone in writing. She wrote down to ask her other sister why Evil X hadn't been to visit her as she lay dying. Her sister told her that Evil X wouldn't come around because of my dad, who would have happily left for a while she came to say goodbye to her sister. He made sure Evil X knew this, too. My dad's partner cried on her deathbed and wrote back, "She's still my little sister and I love her." She never went to visit and spends her time these days complaining to everyone who will listen that my dad is evil incarnate for stopping her from saying goodbye to her sister. It's a small town. Everybody knows everybody, and my dad's gotten a lot of flack for it, despite it being 100% a lie. So, yeah, it's her. I won't ever forgive her. Edit. My dad's partner and Evil X were still on speaking terms when she died, so it wasn't that Evil X was upset that her sister got with her ex-husband and wouldn't see her. It was literally because he was at the hospital. Okay, that's just cruel by the stepmother, and the fact that she hurt OP in ways that were weird is even more sinister than just blatantly abusing them. People like OP's stepmom have serious issues and should be a warning to all people to make sure that you are mentally stable and in a good place mentally before having kids. Literally, just adopt a dog first to see how your spouse interacts with the dog. If your spouse throws up a million red flags just when taking care of a dog, they can't take care of a child either. Story 6. Oh, there are many events, often of worse magnitude, but one event sticks out for its sheer callousness. It was the summer of 2010, and I was trapped in the soul-destroying horror show known as the Straight Commission Life Insurance Pyramid Scam. 6 months into it, having earned precisely $0 in commissions, I was under relentless quota pressure and in terror of being fired for non-production. Note, Out of my training class of about 25 people from 6 months earlier, 20 had left by that time. In a last-ditch effort to survive, I spent several $100s of my own money, which I most assuredly could not spare, on a vendor's space at an upcoming country fair. Maybe I could sell a policy or two and delay my getting fired. Of course I sold nothing. People don't go to country fairs to buy life insurance. At a new agents meeting a day or two later, my group manager, a profoundly disagreeable and stupid woman, asked me how the fair went. I told her it had been a failure, and I had lost money I couldn't afford to lose, and in front of the several other people present, she responded, "I don't care. For the rest of my life, I will hate myself for not walking out on the spot." A few weeks later, I got booted out for not meeting the quota. And this is exactly why I would hate sales and would suck at it. First of all, if I get insulted, I'm going to insult you back. I just can't deal with rude people who don't treat you like humans. Cats. And for the manager, F them. People like them will get their karma always. I hope OP landed on their feet, though. Story 7. My ex-husband left me the day after I got out of the hospital. I was sexually assaulted, and he told everyone I cheated. He knew I would never tell anyone but my own immediate family about the real story to protect my dignity. Thankfully, I received my justice for the assault, and both attackers were caught and sentenced. I was able to identify them in a lineup according to their tattoos, and one had a unique tooth gap. Otherwise, the faces were not memorable. I still have nightmares occasionally of their presences. It was a very open and shut case, but it did take a long time to process because of coronavirus and the system being backed up. My ex-husband still insisted I had cheated, willingly, despite the attackers themselves blatantly confessing on each other, and he made sure all our friends and his family assumed that as well. I was too busy reeling from the trauma to really care, but years later now it does rub me the wrong way, because I really stuck by him through everything. The divorce took a while because he refused to sign the papers, which was odd because he was the one that wanted the divorce in the first place. Eventually, we had to get a judge involved to divorce us on the grounds of abandonment. So much money was wasted on a lawyer when he simply could have just signed the first time. No property, no kids, no income on his part, completely uncontested. The marriage itself was a mess. It took therapy for me to recognize that violence, just because he is on drugs or drunk, is not actually justified. I was convinced each time it was something I did wrong. I was in my early 20s and he was 10 years older. We started dating when I was 20. Now I recognize and cringe at how creepy that is. Especially his comments on my body type, very petite. He also could never hold a job for long. I was the only income and I was working crazy hours to make rent and bills. And I'll admit, I enabled his habits to keep him from hurting me. So many withdrawals. So many nights he didn't remember a thing. So many nights sitting with my back against the tub and my feet holding the door closed while he banged on it till he got tired and wandered off. That was my normal married life. I was raised to always support your husband, so I guess that got lost in translation. My brain took it as stay loyal no matter what, even at his lowest points. So when the one time I needed him most, he was not there. It took him 9 hours to get to the hospital because he was so high. He came in screaming, cursing, and they had to take him out. The next day I came home from the detective's interviews to him being gone. Now I understand that the only way the universe decided to protect me was to have something terrible happen to me to make him leave, because I would have never left on my own. Last I heard, he is on psychotics and living off his elderly mother. I am waking up excited for each day without dread of his mood or pain. A wave of relief each morning. I can't say I think of him often, but I can say that was an ultimate betrayal that has made me hesitant to find love again. I still believe in love because I see it all around me, from the way my brothers treat their wives and the type of husbands my sisters have. For every monster, there is an army of angels. Once I am healed and feel my energy full, I will try again. For now, I'm just focusing on my company and my family and their kids. But when the time comes, I will give my all for the right one, not a leech. As for you, Vinny, I would say get effed, but I hear you are already doing that just fine on your own. This really sucks, too, because OP was only 20 when getting into a relationship with this guy, and so inexperienced with life. I don't have a huge issue with the age gap, although it is pretty large as long as the guy is mature and a good human being who is with you for who you are as a person. Either way, To everyone out there who thinks they are being abused, there are options to get out. Call someone, a hotline, or just leave if you can. Report to police no matter how disinterested they seem. You will get out. Just keep pushing. You got this. Story 8. The summer before I started 5th grade, this boy who was my age tried to hold me underwater at the swimming pool and would threaten, "I'm going to unalive you! I'm going to drown you!" He even told his sister to jump on me near the diving boards, but that didn't happen. That same year after school started, at a football game, the boy and his sister pushed me repeatedly and even spat on me. There were times after that when he'd snap saying, "Don't look at me," but would give me death glares. People will say kids do the things they do because they have their own issues and they don't know how to channel it, or they don't fully know or understand what they're doing. I have 2 things to say there. I observed kids like this brother and sister duo, picking and choosing who they were cruel to and who they were sweet angels to. If that's not an indication that kids know darn well what they're doing, what is? And I don't give a flying crap about what issues the boy had. He and his sister aren't getting my sympathy. And they sure as heck aren't getting my forgiveness either. P.S. In recent years, I've officially been diagnosed with PTSD because of this brother and sister duo and other nasty kids as well. Wherever they are and whatever they're doing now, I hope they're proud of themselves. Dude, bullies are the absolute worst. And honestly, I never really thought about it like that until OP said that if kids really don't know what they're doing, then why do they pick and choose who they are good and bad to? That's a crazy observation and never thought of it like that. It's crazy that adults can literally go to prison for abusing their kids mentally or physically exactly the way bullies abuse their peers. So there needs to be some accountability for those kids and their parents for sure. Story 9. My mom died in 2019. We were lucky enough to know it was coming and to have a couple months to spend with her and say goodbye. My dad was always a decent man, if a little absent, but after my mom died, not even a year later, he remarried a woman he'd known for years at work. Whatever, that's fine. I wish he would have taken more time to be with my siblings and us, but I'm glad he's happy. Well, turns out, even if they didn't physically cheat, everyone at their work knew for years they had chemistry and all kinds of tension. Some woman who didn't know who I was told me that at their reception. Now, 4 years on from my mother dying, I never see my dad. He's always jetting off somewhere with her. She's the executor of his will and takes control of my grandmother if something happens to him. He abandoned his dogs. My brothers and I each took one so they wouldn't go to a shelter because all of a sudden they couldn't even come inside the house. When my mom was alive, they slept on the bed with her. I'm an adult, so it didn't really bother me. But the worst part to me is he straight up told us this woman is more important to him than his own kids and now 2 grandkids. Everyone around him, his kids, friends, sister, and mother, feel this way about what's happened and the woman he married. But I guess he's too far gone. They've isolated themselves on some land, 4 hours away from everyone he loves. Nothing will change until he dies, and she probably gets everything, or she dies. I will never be able to forgive my dad for that. Whoa, this sounds eerily similar to one of my cousins who kind of went through the same thing. It's not a terrible thing to move on after a spouse dies, but the fact that the father had already moved on mentally as his wife was dying is just a heartbreaking thing to hear. Everyone, make sure you're with someone who you know will be fully with you until you are gone. It makes me sad that she didn't have his full love when she passed, and I'm sure she noticed that as well. Truly heartbreaking. Thanks for watching till the end, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more of these ridiculous stories. Love you all, and stay safe out there in that crazy world. Much love. Peace.